Okay, following, you will find a presentation done at the Title III Symposium last summer. The title of my presentation was Promoting Higher Order Thinking in Beginning to Secondary ELLs. First of all, who are our secondary beginner to intermediate ELLs? They are between 1 and 3 years in the country, or 5 years if they are refugees or asylees. They are new arrivals to the United States. This does not include students who might be special education students who are still beginner to intermediate ELLs. The first thing we need to talk about when we want to improve higher order thinking is the affective filter. The affective filter is an imaginary screen influenced by emotional variables that can prevent learning. If you look at this picture, here are 4 students trying to learn, and you will see that the first student looks scared, the second student looks angry, the third student looks unusually happy, and the fourth student is bored or tired. None of these students are ready to learn. In language education, it is especially important to lower learners' affective filter by creating an environment where they feel safe to make mistakes and take risks. Here is a word art. Here's your common coffee filter as your affective filter. Several coffee filters. I don't know if anyone has ever accidentally put more than one coffee filter in the coffee maker, and generally speaking, you don't get very good coffee. So first, let's look at Maslow's hierarchy and culture shock and how the two are complementary. First of all, in the stages of culture shock, we have the honeymoon stage. In the honeymoon stage, the student is thinking, I love it here. America is wonderful. I have all that I think I need. To you as the teacher, the student may seem euphoric and highly motivated. This goes along with fulfilling a student's physiological needs for air, water, food, shelter, and sleep, and companionship, all things that may have been very difficult to attain in their home country. They're also beginning to feel a sense of safety and security, especially in the case of our refugees and asylees. What this student needs is to connect with other students. They need some school survival skills in preparation for the next stage of culture shock. The next stage of culture shock is crisis. In this stage, the same student that was euphoric before is now thinking, I don't understand the language, this is harder than I thought it would be, I can't find my favorite foods, why did my parents bring me here, why do I have to be here? They may even say something like, I hate America, which can seem offensive to us. But ultimately, the student is thinking, I miss my community. This goes to safety and security again, and love and belongingness. To you, the teacher, the student may seem irritable, depressed, disinterested in school or others, aggressive, sleepy. Learning another language and living in a second culture is very hard on the brain. It's very tiring. The student may seem ungrateful, and they may reject English. What they need from us is patience, help learning specific cultural knowledge, For instance, how close do you stand to a person when you're talking to them? Or that you look at a person when they're speaking to you, otherwise it's perceived as disingenuity. These students need to rely on the friends that they made in the first stage, and they need to be provided with opportunities to be included socially. The next stage is recovery. In this stage, the student is thinking, I've made some friends, my teachers are nice, and everything tastes better with a Coke. And let me explain that. Almost anywhere in the world you can get a Coke. It's not something that is only here in the United States. And so often finding that common thing from your culture that you can also get in the second culture can help you to adjust more quickly. It might be Coca-Cola, or it might be Pocky candy, Mentos. It could be something that's not food, some shampoo, just something that reminds them of home, that makes that connection between their home culture and this culture, if it's possible. This feeds into the student's sense of self-esteem, a sense that they have some self-confidence or some competence in dealing with the new culture. To you, the educator, this student may seem happier to be finally making friends, and not just friends within their language group, but actually reaching out to make friends among native English speakers or even among other language groups. They seem more studious, and they just seem more engaged in school. From us, they need guided practice to connect the current culture, the American culture, with their first culture. They may need reduced stimuli, allow them to become entrenched in this recovery period and not overstimulate them. Time to engage, and then community-centered learning activities. The final stage is adjustment. Yay! This student is thinking, I love my home country. I love my new country. I am a new person. My worlds have become my one world. And this goes with Maslow's hierarchy of learning. Students who are self-actualized, who are showing vitality, students begin to show more creativity and self-sufficiency, some authenticity, playfulness. They find meaningfulness around them. And all students, not just our ELLs who are at this stage of Maslow's hierarchy, are better learners. I want to go back to some school survival skills and be more specific for just a minute. So let's talk about some school survival skills. Students, when they first arrive, as well as parents, need access to critical information. Critical information includes changes in the daily or weekly schedule, emergency information, preparation for snow days, an explicit explanation of the student handbook before they are held accountable to attendance, dress codes, etc. Changes in the daily or weekly schedule might include if you have an early release day. We really need to make sure that that is written on the board and explicitly explained to them, not just rely on announcements every day. Emergency information could include if you're getting ready for a fire drill. They need to really know what a fire drill is and what it means, because the lights suddenly going on and off, sirens going on in the school could send our students into a real state of panic, especially if they're coming from tough situations in their home country. Preparation for snow days. We often rely on some type of call-out system to let parents know that there's no school, or we rely on the TV to let them know that there's no school for the day. But many of our students who are not English or Spanish speakers don't really have access to those types of resources. For instance, we had a Chin student a couple of years ago who another teacher was letting him know that to watch the TV tomorrow because we may not have school. And he told her, "Miss, we don't have a TV." And then she said, "Well, you can listen to the radio." And he said, "Miss, we don't have a radio." And she said, "What do you mean you don't have a TV or a radio?" And he said, "Miss, there's nothing in our language on those. Why would we own one of those?" And so in those instances, we need to make sure that we have some way of making contact with the student, whether that is through something like Remind 101 or a system where they can text someone or someone can text them and let them know that there's no school the next day. Students need critical information in a timely manner. It is our responsibility to make that information comprehensible. And this comes from Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So it really is imperative that we make the effort to make sure they have access to that information. We need to provide our students with the skills to be self-sufficient. And we need to make sure that they know how to ask for a pencil, a paper, what is my homework today. Students need to know what basic school items are called. They need to know how to open their locker. Here's an example of something that I've used in my room. At the very beginning of the year, they have a sentence stem, "May I borrow?" And then here are some different things they can borrow. "May I have?" And here are some different things that they can have. And instead of relying on me trying to understand their language, they need to try to ask me in English. A newer, updated version that I have actually includes pictures with it. Now, in order for students to achieve higher order learning, we need to rely on comprehensible input. With a bit of tweaking, many of the strategies we've already learned or are using are very useful. We've talked about the affective filter when it comes to comprehensible input. Here's an example of a graphic organizer that could help by having students categorize the relationships between different words. Realia can also help us to improve their ability to understand what we're telling them. Realia is just anything, whether it's a picture or an item that you can point to. For instance, if you're in a social studies class and you're talking about Europe or England, it would be very helpful to, every time you mention a place, to point to a map where that place is. That's good for our students. It's good for all students. Also, here's a common strategy used for all students. What we're trying to do here is to make the common strategy that we have, we're making a strategy guide for the student. It's in a similar format, and we've gone through and just very quickly defined the words for the student because we don't want to spend a week trying to explain the words on the strategy guide. We want them using the strategy. In this case, the strategy is what to do with words we don't understand. And here are some notes to the teacher. If we're making an accommodation guide, we want it to look similar so they can easily find the information. Include pictures of words or ideas that might have too many meanings or concepts that can be expressed with a simple picture. If you're in a regular ed class with beginning to intermediate ELLs, then give this to them before you actually teach it to the whole class, and if possible, discuss it with your ELLs. And remember again, the goal is not to spend a week trying to teach them what the strategy guide, Be a Word Detective, says, but to get them using this strategy. We have to provide comprehensible input. Next, we want to talk about comprehensible output. Students must be speaking and writing in a way both we and they can understand so that we can assess and differentiate. If we can't understand them, then we have no idea what is going on in their heads. The very first system to use is a response system. And you want it to be a graduated response system, meaning you want it to get more sophisticated as your students begin to learn more. The very first type of system that I use in my classroom is a thumbs up, thumbs down, and also kind of a thumbs sideways, meaning I kind of understand what you're saying, but not completely. We also want to use sentence stems. And here are some different types of sentence stems. And of course, you don't want to give these to them all at once, but begin with a very simple sentence stem. Another type of more sophisticated response system would be something like poll everywhere. And with this system, if you have iPods, iPads, even their cell phones, you could create any type of question that you want, and then they could text in and let you know their answer. The next one is a choice board. I love choice boards. This gives the chance for the student to choose which activity they want to complete, and the activities could be differentiated by level so that your lower students could choose something easier and your higher students could choose something a little more difficult. The final one is closed notes. This is very easy. This is a very easy method for especially the regular ed teachers. On the left is a PowerPoint that a teacher created to teach the steps of the scientific method. It's very easy then for the teacher to just save that file to a different name and then go through and blank out the important words. For your very, very beginner students, remember you want to give them a word bank to choose from, and then as they move on in their language development, you can reduce the number of words in your word bank and increase the number of blanks until finally the student maybe doesn't need any notes at all and they're taking their own notes just like the other students are. Okay, finally, in summary, in order to promote higher order thinking, we want to manage the affective needs of our students. We want to use organizers and accommodation strategies to make input comprehensible. We want to teach skills for comprehensible output, and we want to clearly communicate high expectations.